There it is. We live. Let's see. Let's see if I see me out here. It's going through space. It's going through the internet. There we are. What's up, business nerds? Happy Wednesday night. Let me just share this to my page here. We're live. All right. It's the late night happy hour, ladies and gents. Brian Richardson in the house. How you doing, man? Here's the deal, guys. It's bookkeeping, beer, and BS. It's the late night happy hour. Welcome, all you business nerds. I'll do this, and then we gotta intro our guest because I gotta get to know this guy. If this is the first time you're tuning into bookkeeping, beer, and BS, any of the content we're putting out, I go by Dan Plata, also known as the Home Service CFO. I run service businesses. I run a bookkeeping business. I'm a little bit of a weird finance nerd type of guy. And all the stuff we do, all the content that we make is all geared around helping business owners make decisions, because that's why we do bookkeeping. That's why we keep track of our numbers. That's why we run businesses, is to make decisions. So we're going to be talking with Joseph Toppi tonight, talking all about making business decisions, getting all the lowdown of all his experiences. And if, I've got the Turfs Up radio show, make a lot of live clips out on YouTube. If it's the first time coming to the late night happy hour show, what we're trying to replicate here is exactly what would happen if Joseph and I ran into each other at a bar, at a convention, or whatever the case is. We'd probably spend an hour or so, sometimes multiple hours, talking about our businesses, talking about our experiences, talking about everything we learned. And that's what we're going to get into. We're just going to have a good old-fashioned conversation with a couple business owners and see where it takes us. By all means, you're invited to the conversation. Drop your comments in, drop your questions in, drop your jokes in. Not that any of you guys got any jokes. Maybe you got some jokes. There's probably some smart asses in the crowd. So drop in your stuff, and Joseph and I will address it. Joseph, how the heck you doing tonight, man?
I am doing good, man. Thanks. I'm just excited to be on this show with you. Excited to get started, get to know you a little bit. I kind of had to have a little chuckle. You talk about the numbers and the business and that. I'm actually known as the numbers nerd.
I like that. And some alliteration with that, too.
So one of the things when I kind of started diving into business years and years and years ago, I dove right into the financial and the number side of things. And that's kind of been my forte and what I specialize in. So this will be a great conversation.
We're going to get carried away. Here. We got the numbers nerd and the service CFO. Look out. Shout out Tom Jurek. What's up, buddy? Ryan Crowley in the house. How you doing, man? Libby says, Dan Plata, you have a shirt on today. LOL. Yesterday I did just a quick, I do this midday workout every day. I got to get my workout in. Part of it is I drink a lot of beer. Part of it is I do bookkeeping, so I sit at a desk a lot more than I used to. So I got to get that midday workout in. But it's 90 plus degrees out. So it's why would I wear more clothes than I legally have to? I'm just going topless. So I started doing a live from my phone talking about it. And then the minute I went live, I was like, oh yeah, I don't have a shirt on. So I even had to do a full body scan just to prove I'm not just out here running naked. So right. Libby couldn't resist. Had to
I was going to actually bring that video up today. And I think this is a great segment into it. Powerful. I caught it I was on doing something, and I caught that video when it went live. Had a chuckle, no shirt on, right? But I same belief, getting that midday exercise in to generate energy for the second half, essentially, right? Something that I used to be very diligent with. I had an office downtown of where I was living, and I would get out every day and go walk, and absolute game changer for high performers and high level.
I can tell when I'm not working out that my the strategy part of my brain just isn't quite there. That break makes a difference, and I get fatigued for the second half of the day. Not tired fatigued, but just a mental fatigue. I almost need meetings that I don't care about, because if it's something strategic in the second half of the day, I wouldn't have the fortitude to like plow through and come up with anything. So like you said, it's like a little bit of a reset. It just does the trick. And I mean, and I think this is a trait of a lot of business owners. I just can't sit in the same place for an extended period of time. I would just go stir crazy. And that kind of happens with me at this computer because I'm just here a lot, and it's Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting, and then whatever else, doing demos and doing bookkeeping stuff. So I got to get up and got to get away from this computer screen to get my mind right a little bit,
Absolutely. No, good stuff.
So Joseph, let's there's some guests where I'm like, let me introduce you. But one thing that I don't like that I see podcasters do a lot is they try to introduce people that they don't know. So I could have been like, hey, Joseph, send me your biography and I'm going to introduce you. And it's going to sound like I'm reading a thing that you sent me, which it would be. Instead of doing that, I'd rather just have you introduce yourself because I'm curious. I see you in Facebook groups. I see you in High Performing Contractor. So it's not the first time I've seen you, but I've never like sat at a bar and had a beer with you, and that's what I want to do. So let's dive in. Let's get a little background. How'd you start with, you don't need to go back to your origin of like, date and time that you were born, but let's go like, how'd you get into the service industry? Did you come right out of your education into the service industry? Did you do some corporate stuff into the service industry? Where'd you get your start?
Absolutely. So I grew up in a trade family. Dad was HVAC. So during my senior year of high school, I got into framing and fell in love with construction, fell in love with the labor side of it, the mental side of it. It just kind of made sense. So, I mean, we all have that one thing that just we click and it makes sense. And for me, it was the construction. So been in the construction industry for 24 years, an owner in both Canada and the US with construction companies for the last 20 plus. Big companies.
Canada and the US at the same time, or did you like move from Canada to the US or US to Canada and then start a new business there? How'd you bridge that?
Absolutely, a little bit of both. So I was born and raised in the US. Moved to Canada. So I had a small little, startup company in the US, moved to Canada, spent 17 years there, had great success in my companies, and then moved back to the States actually a year ago. So I owned a company in the US, and then I started investing in companies, construction companies in the US, investing into the business owners, getting the companies turned around and profitable. And back in, so I was just that business owner, the typical truck and hammer and getting started, and did quite well. And in 2007 was kind of my turning point where I had a businessman sit down with me, and he essentially posed the question, businessman or tradesman? Right. That
interesting. Almost the way that you just said it made me think of like, it almost felt like, can you even be both? Do you have to be one or the other?
Yeah. You see,
that's how that feels.
Absolutely. Well, and I have my own personal thoughts on that. I think that at the end of the day, there is a choice that you have to make. It's almost that, can you serve two masters? Because at the end of the day, you have your business. Being a businessman is that identity of knowing the rules of the game and knowing the numbers in the back end and all that comes with that. And then it becomes hard to, at that point, be the trades guy, be the guy out there, be the operator.
Yep.
So I got posed with that question and threw me for a bit of a whirlwind. And the next 4.5 years, I ended up really changing my mindset, changing my positioning, and fell in love with the finance, the business, the numbers side of it.
Yeah.
And the last, from that point on, pretty much until I sold my last company, we were multi-million-dollar commercial industrial concrete company. Cool thing with it, I started it out of the foundation of I just do the business, and I
Yeah,
hired
right from the get go.
right because I'll be honest with you. Let's pull back the curtain. Let's be transparent and honest. I don't know a damn thing about concrete. There was just there was a need in the market where I was. There was a huge, huge need for it, and I found guys that knew it. And I put everything that I knew about business and all the systems and the estimating everything together. Hired the guys, and within 16 months, we broke 7 figures.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
Absolutely crazy.
so I ran that company.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say ran that company in 2015, 16, sorry, sold it and spent a year traveling with my family by RV. And at that point, I kind of launched my coaching, working with contractors.
Awesome. Awesome. I was going to say it blows my mind. And I'm not good at this part of it. So I have to like find people that are really good at this part and surround myself with those people. But how important the systems and processes are. And like you said, with that concrete business, you don't need to be an expert in concrete to run a business that does concrete, but you sure as hell need to be an expert in systems and processes and being able to take what you've learned from other experiences and put that to use. That's something that explains why a CEO of, a manufacturing company can all of a sudden be the CEO of a retail company.
Absolutely.
Like leadership and systems and processes don't know industries. It's a skill set that applies to any business we get into, because at the end of the day, like each business is just a set of decision making and processes and surrounds, it's all based on the numbers and what the finances tell you. It's
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely. I think to be honest, CEOs with the experience in the industry, they're almost at a disadvantage because they have preconceived notions, they have ideas they're going into it, instead of going into that industry with just the raw business knowledge and acumen.
Yeah, just ready to ask questions.
Yeah, and you bring up systems, and that definitely that last company there that we had, that was the success of it. We created what was known as the Your Way, and it was an absolute binder and book. Everything was systemized, from the way that people answered the phone to the way our crews unpacked the trailer in the morning, to everything was systemized. So at any given time, if I walked up to any one of my employees and I asked them, how do you form a 2-foot grade beam? They would say the I Construction way. I Construction was the company. And it wasn't step by step. It was the I Construction way. We just did it our way. And bringing everybody on the same page minimized inefficiencies. It minimized confusion.
I was going to say, and just like the drama that comes with, I do it this way and this is the right way to do it. And it's like, well, this is how we do it here.
Yeah. And there was almost, what I found is when we hired, even when we would hire skilled guys that, come and they have experience and they have this skill, it was almost a sense of relief that they didn't almost have to go in pounding their chest, I know what I'm doing. They could fall into a system, learn a system, fall into it, and everybody's doing it. They wouldn't be, questioned if it's right or wrong. They wouldn't be told their way's wrong. It was just, they were able to settle in, and it really kind of disarmed them a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Shout out Brad Smith in the house. Shout out Austin. Joseph Douglas, what's up, buddy? So Joseph, I'm curious, when you got started in construction, was it like an intentional thing that you started with the HVAC experience that you're like, because I know this, I'm going here? Was it something that just presented itself to you? Did you have I'm going to do construction and I'm going to build this, or I'm going to remodel that? How did that inflection point go where you're like, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm going into construction?
Absolutely. So, like I said, growing up in it, I mean, it was always a thing. But when I got into it, my youth pastor at the church owned a large framing company.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm 18, I'm going to get into framing, and started framing, and just fell in love with it. And then at that point, I
Were
think
you
just
were you doing that for him, or did you just kind of do it as a personal business project?
no, I did it for him. So I worked for him for, I want to say 2.5 years before I started my first renovation company.
Okay.
And that came out of just really that entrepreneur inside,
Yeah.
just like, I can take on my own jobs. I can do the work. I know how to do it.
Yeah.
And, I got into it that way.
Awesome. How now you said you started in the US and then you moved to Canada. Was that like a family move? What drew you from the US to Canada? Where the heck did you go in Canada? I don't know if you said that.
Saskatchewan, Canada. So right above, we're going to play geography now, right? Um,
Oh, I better pull up Google Maps real quick.
Dead center of Canada, right above like Montana, North Dakota
Yeah.
area. Cold as, okay, Saskatchewan has the second largest temperature swings
Oh,
in
I
the
bet.
world,
I bet.
behind Siberia. I mean, if you're comparing or a runner up to anything to Siberia, you're screwed,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's drastic. That's super
Yeah.
drastic. But I get
So
it. I mean, like you're super landlocked in there and you're far enough north. But man, that jet stream goes plenty up and down. You're probably getting 90 degrees in the summer and 40, 50 below in the winter.
you're bang on. Absolutely. That was pretty much what it was. We would have huge swings, but it was a typical story. You meet a girl, you get married, and you move somewhere. It's crazy.
Yeah. Uh Cole Sycophus, my buddy, chimes in and said lots of good hunting in Saskatchewan. I was
Very
I was
good.
I was thinking lots of good fishing there too. And then
Very
Brad Smith says been that way in my oil field days. Not fun.
good. Yep, lots of we call them rig pigs. Lots of oil guys. Lots of hunting and fishing, tons.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
So what brought you to Saskatchewan? Was it intentional or did you get dragged along on something?
like I said, that girl, she was from there. We got married, moved up there, and yeah, ended up 3 kids, and stayed up there for 17 years.
That's great. What brought you back?
Um, Kind of my wife and I always had that one day we'll move back. Like,
Yeah,
I'll move back to the U.S. and, well, that day came, and yeah,
there you go.
we
There you go.
made the move.
Do you end up with like dual citizenship then?
And no, I was just a permanent resident up there.
Okay.
I never went for my citizenship.
Gotcha. What is and your wife now down with you here? Just
Yep.
how did like what does that transition look like from a citizenship standpoint? Like, is she considered an immigrant? I don't even know. How does that work? What's the reciprocity look like?
Yeah, she's an immigrant, so we're working on her green card right now. Getting her green card, and then after 3 years of having her green card status, she can get citizenship and be a dual citizen.
Neat, man. How's she liking it? Because did you meet her down here and then move back up there? Like, is she like used to being in the States, or is it a shock to her system?
No, this was So actually, this is I got remarried when I was up in Saskatchewan.
Okay,
So I met her up there, and we did a lot of travel. So we've been together for 10 years now, and we've done a ton of
you covered
travel
some
in and out
ground.
of the States. So it's kind of, it was kind of a second home to her before we even moved.
Gotcha. What? So you got into construction remodeling when you got your start. you finished in concrete. As you went through multiple construction businesses, was there a niche that you're like, this is my jam, this is what I love to do? Because like concrete, it sounds like you got into because like the opportunity was there. It wasn't for the love. It was just like somebody's got to do this, and it might as well be me. What like through a bunch of construction experiences, what all different? I feel like construction is a super broad thing. There's commercial, there's residential, there's remodels, there's new construction. What facets did y'all get into, and what did you love?
Absolutely. So I did the renovation and finished carpentry. Like that, like the kind of the broad spectrum of it. So needing to learn or needing to know a lot. Got into home building. So I was building custom homes for a while. Invested in a couple fencing and decking companies.
Okay.
So
were you like general contracting it, or how did that work in your world? Were you kind of the GC, or how do you play that game?
Absolutely. So I ended up one of the things I learned really quick in the renovations was there was more potential money by GCing versus self-performing all of the work. So I quickly shifted out of doing the work myself, hiring the employees to do the work, got into GCing them. When I was in the new home construction, it was all GCing. Didn't really self-perform much of anything. Was kind of fortunate enough and smart enough to see the benefits of learning the business and the system side of it and getting off the tools, and hiring people.
Yeah. What I have to imagine, and we've got a few maid service businesses, window cleaning businesses, this admin business, got stories for days, right? Give me a story, like the most outrageous when you're GCing. I gotta imagine like some contractors don't quite hit the mark for you every once in a while. Any like outrageous stories of a setup gone wrong with any contractors that you're using?
I actually, there was one case where I drugged the contractor out of his own bed. So he was ghosting me. He was holding up the project. He couldn't get a hold of him, not showing up, not returning calls. And it went on for about a week. And like I said, he was holding up a project. It was a new home. And I finally had enough. I drove to his house. His wife was more than willing to let me in the door. And I went in and I literally grabbed him and drug him out of bed and stood there waiting for him to get dressed and got him to the job site.
I was going to say, is it like, did that escalate and it fell apart? Or did you actually be like, you're coming with me? I'm taking you to that job site. We're going right now.
Yep, absolutely did that. I got him, made sure he called his guys on the way, and ended up, he finished it off. He only had a couple days left there. So finished off the project, and then it was kind of one of those never saw him again.
Let's agree to part ways at this point. Yeah. But we still got to get this job done.
Yeah. So, but walked right into his room and drug him out of bed.
What? Did you pay his full bill or did you discount it?
Hell no. I discounted it. There was definitely some back charging on there.
I was gonna say a little lack of performance going on, maybe.
Well, I mean, I had to get paid for my time and my mileage to drive to his house.
Yeah, right. So GCN, anything but like between general contracting and new home construction, or is that when you kind of sold and then moved into the concrete world? What's the next step for you?
Yeah, so I went into the new construction and then right into the concrete. Saw a major opening in there, like I said, made the shift into the concrete. And then at 2016, we sold, kind of got out of owning fully the companies and looked more into investing. So invested into landscape, hardscape companies, fencing, decking, excavating. So a bunch of different ones. Yeah. To kind of answer your question, if I was to go to one niche that I absolutely loved on the labor standpoint doing myself, as funny as it is decks. I love building decks. So
what about it? What's the like? What gets to you?
You know what? I don't know. I had somebody just not that long ago ask me the same thing. And I think it was just, it made sense. It wasn't a lot of thinking. I didn't need any blueprints, nothing like that. I had all the numbers in my head, and I
Yeah.
could cut everything and do it and finish it real quick. And I made a ton of money at it. And yeah, I think that was about it. It was just I had a very good system, so it was just you're showing up, right, and
Yeah.
going through it.
Execute. I
Yeah.
I have no construction. I shouldn't say no construction experience. I worked for my uncle when I was in high school, and it was like a window finishing shop. But we also made displays for Menards, and like we built displays that are in Lambeau Field and beer displays and stuff like that. And so carpentry was involved. And as I like worked there longer and longer and longer, they start to trust you with power tools, right? So eventually I got to actually like build some stuff and work on that sort of thing. So I'm not afraid of using table saws and hacksaws and whatever else. Like if you can be safe, power tools are a hell of a lot of fun. Um, and I've got a long ass backyard. We have a pool in our backyard, which is the stupidest thing to have in Minnesota. We get like 3 months and you got to be in it every day to make it make sense. But it came with the house that we bought. And there's this fence. I mean, that's a 30-year-old house, and there's a long fence that goes all the way around our yard. And it's a long ass backyard. And man, like it's mostly cedar, I think. So it's holding up okay. But where they put all the fence posts in is a bunch of 4x4s, and they didn't like have any form to the concrete that they poured. It was just like they dug a hole, put a post in it, poured concrete, and sometimes they leveled it. And so it's like, and this fence goes for days, and they put the concrete in super low. And so the dirt gets on top of the concrete, then the water stays against the post, and the post eventually rots and falls over. So I'm like replacing fence posts, and every time you got to dig up this big chunk of concrete that is, whatever shape it is that they dug the hole. And then you've got these sections of fence that are 6 to 8 feet long. And, the 2x4s holding these like cedar 6 inch wide planks together are pretty rotted, as you can imagine. So every time a fence post goes down, it's like, oh boy, like what did we get ourselves into here? So I don't know that I love it, but I'm starting to enjoy, because like I think this is just like an entrepreneurial thing. We just like working hard no matter what it is. That's the only reason we get into small business, because if we didn't really love doing a lot of hard work with no appreciation, we'd never be an entrepreneur. So like this weekend I was out there digging up the concrete and getting rid of that and putting a new fence post in. And what I thought was just like replace that fence post turned into replace 3 sections of fencing too. And I think the thing, and I've done a deck before. I did a deck at my old house, but I'm not great at getting all the angles lined up. Like the railing, you could tell was installed by a bookkeeper. But fencing, like even I can like get that level enough that it looks okay from a distance. So I kind of appreciate fencing in that even a numbskull like me can slap up a section of fence and make it look pretty decent. So I'm liking that. Makes
That's
me feel
funny.
useful. My wife doesn't know that I don't really know what I'm doing. She just looks at it and is like, it looks like you got her up. And I'm like, got it up. So I'm like, there's lines going horizontal and lines going straight. You can't ask for much more. Ain't
Right.
nobody need to walk around on it like a deck at least. So I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. So no, so deck for doing it, and to be honest, running a business, the concrete, I love the industry, and I think one of the biggest reasons is the numbers behind it.
Yeah.
You have larger equipment, you have typically bigger crews, a lot more dynamics, so it's just a bigger game, right? It's a bigger strategy game.
What kind of when you're saying concrete, I'm picturing like the truck that does this thing and it keeps turning, and you're dragging concrete out to a thing and you're pouring the foundation. All right, is it residential? Is it commercial? Is it whoever calls? Who are you targeting in that business where's the bread and butter for a concrete business?
Absolutely. So we were commercial industrial. So we worked on whether it was foundations and flat work for strip malls, or the other side of that spectrum of large processing facilities. So like grain processing, canola processing.
Okay.
Um, did a lot of curbing sidewalk for cities
Oh,
and
cool.
rural
Yeah.
municipalities. So that was our bread and butter, was that commercial industrial. Um, we didn't do much of the residential. When I got done with my term of building houses, I was done in the residential sector.
Yeah. Yeah. I like
You know, I was done dealing with Mr. and Mrs. residential customer, because at the end of the day, when you're doing B2C, right, you're dealing with someone that has an emotional attachment to the money. You know, they worked hard for it, they exchanged their time and effort for it. So to depart from it, there's an emotional connection. When you're dealing B2B, right, or in that case, I was dealing, myself to big corporate, they don't give a damn, right? It's
it's a timeline and a result, and here's what the budget says.
Absolutely. As long as we're coming within their budget, it doesn't matter. They're not trying to nickel and dime out of it. It's all preset. The expectations from them are there. We just have to fill the expectations.
Yep. Yeah, it's much easier to understand the motivations of a business owner than it is of a homeowner.
Absolutely.
Homeowners can be anybody. And like I tell our window cleaners that all the time. One of the questions we ask them in an interview is, tell us a joke. And they're like, huh? And they don't know what to do, right? They kind of like panic and stall out. Some will come up with a joke, some won't. But I always explain it as like, you show up for an interview, you never expect somebody to ask you to tell them a joke, and I just got to see how you like solve problems quickly and come up with something, because you're going to be out at a house and a dude's going to walk by naked, or a lady's going to be taking a dump, and you're going to like go up to clean the window, and you're going to be like, oh, sorry, Mrs. Jones. Like, strange stuff's going to happen, and people are weird. So you better be ready for the unexpected, because although it's unexpected, like once a week, something really weird's going to happen. You're going to have a bunch of great stories later, but at the time, you just better be able to think on your feet, because people are weird. So be ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that was one of the nice things with the commercial industrial. You kind of knew what you were getting into every morning, right? With everything and everybody around, it was just a little bit more, the work might catch you off guard at times.
Yep. So what ended up getting you out of concrete? Was it like just got the right opportunity to sell? Was it time for the next thing? I don't want to like put the words in your mouth, but was like coaching already starting to happen, and so you like had to start devoting more time to that? Because it sounds like it was a great business to be in. What was the exit?
Absolutely. So it was a little bit of everything that you mentioned. Definitely the coaching was starting. So I actually, because of the great success I had, I was working with a lot of the other contractors in our area, helping them, especially in the numbers, in a program that I have called Construction Numbers Mastery. And, something I built for my company, it was just something I kind of gave off to them. We had a trip planned, a 1-year trip RVing around North America. So and I'm more of I love that starting and building. So for me, I found that it got to where it was, and it was time for the next thing.
Yeah.
So all of those stars aligned. Had an employee that we offered it to, and we went and traveled and did the kind of launched me full time into the coaching.
Nice. Was coaching something that was always on your radar, or was it hey, we just sold this business, now what am I going to do? Oh, I guess I have all this expertise, I can probably help some people out. How did that get into coaching for you?
Great question. No, it was never, if I look back, it was never something that I was like, man, I want to aspire to be a coach, right? I think it was one of them things the last year or two before I transitioned into it. I was working with more and more people, and I saw a greater and greater need in and amongst tradesmen for guidance, for leadership, for coaching and consulting. So that kind of heart of serving came out, and it was like, hey, I have I have the experience, I have some different expertise, and I can really help these guys out.
I dig it. How is the coaching thing something that's a personal thing for you, or is it like another business you want to scale? What's the vision for coaching as a business for you?
Absolutely. So it's a little bit of both. Part of it is it comes from that service side, right? One of our kind of mantras or things within High Performing Contractor is helping you build a business to provide you the lifestyle you desire. And the second part of that is so that you can have a greater impact. So for us, it's a way of impacting and impacting other people, other families, other lives. But as far as a business, I never really go into anything as a hobby, right? That's the business mindset of mine. Definitely scaling. We have a lot of things we're working on now, a lot of things that we just launched that are scaling. At the same time of serving with excellence the construction and service-based industries.
So is part of your role then to go find more coaches? Like I'd imagine like similar to any other business, you need more capacity if you're going to scale it. And then how do you find coaches with the right level of expertise that can be useful to another business owner?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we did this year is we started working, providing more of like a full business support and full business coaching. So coming in not as a sales coach or a systems coach or a numbers coach, but coming in as providing a community where we pull out other professionals, other people with great skill, and we get them in working within our community of contractors and tradesmen.
Nice. Where is it today? And then like, where is your vision for it? How far does this road take you?
Absolutely. So today, today it's obviously, for my grand vision, it's a lot smaller than I want it to be.
Yeah. The vision, all of our businesses are.
Exactly, right? Like if you're a true entrepreneur, you're not satisfied where you're at right now, right? And where I want to take it is the community that we've built, we want to see by the end of this year, 100 members in it. By the end of next year, about 250 in it. I take it, what our vision is to see almost like a university, so to speak.
Yeah.
Where a business owner anywhere is on their journey, whether they're starting up or they've been in business for 20, 30 years, they can come in and get the support, the help, the coaching, the resources, the training that they need.
What who's the target? Is it brand new businesses? Is it businesses that like hit an inflection point of maybe $1 million in revenue or a couple million in revenue, and then they like hit a ceiling and they need help through that? Who's the bread and butter, if you will?
Absolutely.
That gets the most out of that sort of coaching and training?
Absolutely. So our bread and butter would be your 2.5 to 10 million, 5 to 10 million, somewhere around there. They're running 12 guys, 12 plus, to where systems becomes a big a big need. So 3 main areas that I personally work in the coaching is the finance, the business finance, leadership and management. So, I mean, employees are a hot topic right now, right?
No kidding.
So
No kidding.
hiring, attracting, hiring, and keeping employees, and then systems, processes, and strategy. So when you're looking at that, companies in that 5 to 10 million, they're companies where they need that shift in mindset of, okay, I need to take better control over my numbers. I need to get some, management and leadership in place, and we have to systemize the hell out of this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you, I want to get into the recruiting thing a little bit, and then I want to get into the numbers thing. And once we get onto the numbers thing, who knows where we'll go? But
right?
On the recruiting side of it, and like the employee side of it, this is just an observation I have with the harder nosed the business. So like hardscaping and just some of like the tougher, grittier businesses out there, construction I'd put into that. Do you see that those types of dudes that get into that type of business that are just like tough, gritty businesses, do they struggle with the employee side of it because they're just so tough and hard? Or because they're tough and hard, are they great leaders because they're just like dominant? Here's what you got to do. Here's what we're doing, and I'm not taking no for an answer type of thing. How do you see that like employee side of it play out? Is there a trend that you see in that type of space that you work with a lot?
Right now, trends are hard with employees because everybody, it doesn't matter if you're selling women's shoes or you're, in construction, you can't get anybody, So if I was to speak to that question from 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when it wasn't as bad, I would say that those construction, your concrete, your framers, hardscape, landscape, where it's a very high demand job or position, tends to have a harder time attracting and a more churn.
Yeah.
Due to a couple reasons, and you're going to kind of put me on the spot here, but one is the work itself. 2 is actually the nature of the business owner in those industries, because they tend to be more of that hard ass that, because they're working hard. I mean,
the my way or the highway mentality type of thing.
And, in everything in life, except numbers don't change, but everything else in life, it changes. And we've gone through, it started, I mean, if we're honest, it started probably about 10 to 15 years ago, where employee management is shifting. It's not the old school. I mean, I grew up in the old school construction where it was like, my way, highway, you do what I say, not as I do, and you give me, I'm here to get as much out of you in an 8-hour a day for as little amount of pay as possible.
Yep.
That's not the case anymore. And addressing employees that way, because employees, if they don't like the way they're being treated, or if you're being a hard ass, they'll go flip burgers for $2 an hour.
They're gone.
Right? And they're out of the elements. They're in air conditioning. They don't have someone breathing down their neck, and they're just gone. The loyalty to a job, about 15 years ago, it wasn't even loyalty to a company or loyalty to a owner or a boss. It was loyalty to a career or to a specific job. That's gone. So now it's, how do you attract? So we've never seen a time like the last 5 to 10 years where law of attraction plays a crucial role in hiring.
Yeah. Is there anything that you see people doing, like the successful companies that are recruiting? Are they doing anything different? Because we have a recruiting business that's part of our admin company. So I've got some thoughts, and I'll talk about those and like what I see that's been changing for us, and even in our own businesses, some mindset shifts. Is there anything that you've seen where it's like, man, these companies are doing this, and that's the game changer, and if you ain't doing that, you're just out there spending thousands of dollars on Indeed ads, like hoping and praying.
Absolutely. One, they quit making it about money. It's no longer about money. In saying that, we typically we address right to the money. We go right to the money. I'm going to pay you X amount. If we're struggling to get employees, we pay more, right? And it just kills the business itself. So the guys that are succeeding in this, the one big thing they're doing is not making it about money. If you don't make it about money, the employee doesn't make it about money.
Mm-hmm.
Surveys have been put out over the last multiple decades that prove that with employees, money is actually number 4 or 5 on the list of what they look at for long-term career choices.
Yep.
The second thing that they're doing is they're going into the hiring. The successful businesses are going into the hiring process with community, culture, connection already established, so that when they hire somebody, they're landing into a company that's not a hot mess. They're landing into something that they feel they're a part of the greater good.
Yeah, it's a career, not a hobby.
Absolutely. And then I think one of the last things is the successful companies out there, they're not hiring out of urgency. They have a system. So, typically in the construction, if you sent me a resume and I'm interviewing you right now, I want you to work tomorrow. I'm like, it's 11 o'clock.
When can you start? Yeah.
So most of the successful, they have a system, a hiring process to where first interview is like maybe a couple weeks before you're actually even going to start working. Because going back to numbers, they have the numbers in place to where they can start to forecast when they need people rather than, waking up in the morning going, I need a guy.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I need 2.
Yeah, exactly.
We always say in our recruiting business, it's the ABCs. Always be recruiting. Because you never know when you're going to find an A player, and what's the harm in recruiting them even when you don't need them. Yeah. It's easier to go find the next customer than it is to go find the next employee. So if you find a great employee, hire them. Or do like you do with leads. You don't have to serve every lead right away. There's nothing wrong with building a book of applicants and good candidates.
Yep.
You can bring them on board whenever, because even if they go take another job now, interview them and say, hey, we don't have an immediate position, but we're always interviewing and we're always looking to hire the next person. And the minute that we have that workload, you're the first person on the list. We're going to reach out to you. Totally get it if you got something else in the cooker, but we ain't going anywhere. And when that job ain't working for you, you know where to find us. And it's like, you just treat it like a lead, right? You just keep checking in with them. Hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? Ready to come and work here? We're awesome. We're still awesome. We're still going to be awesome. Let us know when you're ready. And eventually, they're going to leave their job. The job market is so fluid right now.
Yep.
If somebody's reaching out to them and says, hey, yeah, you might make decent money over there. Well, we pay about the same and it doesn't suck to work here. So let us know when you want a job that doesn't suck. We'll be here for you. So
absolutely. 100%, man. 100%. And I think it's so important for that. Like you said, always be recruiting, right? Always be recruiting. And I developed the process to where, we would bring our customer, our employees or potential employees to a certain point. And Part of that, they already went through part of our company orientation. They already went through part of our training. So all of our guys, they didn't start on job site until they went through training, because I ran the numbers on it. What it does to the productivity of your existing crew and how much you're actually losing
Yeah, it
money.
actually costs more to have them out there.
Absolutely. So we would have a full training. So when we were recruiting, and we might not have had a position open, or we're still waiting on a couple pieces to fall in place, we would bring them up to a certain point and then kind of handle them like you said, right? Like, they knew they might not, we might not be at that point, but we brought them to that point, and then we had some that did go off and get jobs with other companies, and we called them up going, hey, we do have that opening now. And 9 times out of 10, they're like, okay, give me a week, give me 2 weeks, whatever it is, and I'll be there.
Yep. Yeah, similar with customers, it's all about establishing the relationship. Business is driven by relationships, and the most important relationships we have are with our employees, because if we don't have them, we don't have a damn business.
Absolutely.
We got nothing.
Well, that's what's his name, Richard Branson.
Yeah.
Virgin.
Yeah.
It's not about the customer, it's about the employee.
Always. We look at it, and for construction, I bet it's even more drastic. But when I look at like a pressure washing company or a hardscaping company, that employee is worth $200,000 of revenue in a year pretty easily. And then we look at the customer, and we're like, they're worth a couple $1,000 of revenue in a year. If you give me a choice, I'll take the employee, please. That good employee is going to get me many more customers than just going finding a customer. So, and you can't scale a business with just you. It's just not possible.
Nope, not at all.
Let me shift to actually, I want to, on the recruiting side of it, I'm going to bounce this off of you, and just for the listeners and people watching, this is something that we found from how the game has changed. We always do some assessments, and we do this for our recruiting clients. We do this for ourselves. And that was what we used to call them, was assessments, right? Like, we need you to fill out this thing, and we're going to score you, and then we're going to have some data on you. Well, nobody likes to be examined, assessed, quizzed. And so now it's a job success predictor. Jobs. I think we call it a job satisfaction predictor. And it's still the same types of questions, but it's all geared around, are you going to love it here? It's not geared around, are we going to love you? It's not geared around, you need to impress us. It's geared around, we need to impress that candidate. That's it's the biggest. Sean, who's our recruiting director, tells all of our clients, this is the biggest sale of your life. Every time you're about to hire an employee, this is bigger than your biggest customer. I don't know. We don't have any customers that pay us $200,000 a year. In construction, I'm sure you do. But in pressure washing, I don't have any clients that pay me $200,000 a year. But my good employees are worth $200,000 a year. It's the biggest sale every time we're interviewing somebody and going through that candidate process. So we started to change all of our questions. We had a lot of scenario-based questions, like, out of these 3 things, which would bug you the most? And we would kind of weed out the things where we're like, oh, if these petty things bug them the most, we have data that shows that they're just not going to last. We flip those around into, which of these 3 things would you love the most? Because if they tend to love the things that drive our core values, they're going to tend to stick around. And the second part of that we started implementing was, instead of bringing them in for us to do an interview, we bring them in for us to do a sales presentation to them. And we present our origin story, our core values, a day in the life. We go through our CRM and show them what this guy did today and what this guy did today and what a paycheck would look like if you did something like that. And we let them ask questions. We don't ask them any questions, but you can immediately tell, you can tell who's interested because they actually show up, because there's still the math of we got to get 100 applications to get the employee that we want. But now you can see really quickly in their body language and the questions that they ask who actually wants to work there. And it's the best interview tactic that we found to find out who's going to be good. which is, do they actually want the job, or are they just there to do an interview? And they've done a bunch of interviews because they can get an interview anywhere. So they're all pretty good at interviewing, but they're not all great at showing whether they're interested or not. And you can tell right away who actually wants to come work for you and who like loves those core values and loves what the business is based on and all that stuff. And they're like sitting forward in their chair and they're asking questions. And all of a sudden, and there's 5 of them there. We usually invite them to this without them knowing it's a group interview. We just say, yeah, interviews are at 4:00 on Thursday. And all of a sudden, like 5 guys show up and you got like 2 guys in suits and ties and then 3 guys in cargo shorts. And they're like trying to make up for their lack of dress, right? Because they're like, it's a window cleaning pressure washing job. And it's kind of fun to watch the competition start a little bit as to like they're all of a sudden it's not like them trying to impress you in an interview. It's them trying to impress you in like a sports game. And it's like made all the difference that we've noticed, and I don't have data that like numerically on it, but anecdotally, we used to probably get about half of the people we actually wanted, right? We'd interview and be like, man, we hope we get that guy. Oh, shoot, he like, he interviewed 20 places in a day. So he can get any job he wants. Ours wasn't the top one, right? And then they usually ghost you and you complain about how nobody wants to work anymore and nobody always no-shows. And it's like, yeah, because they interviewed 20 places. They don't even remember who they all interviewed with. Right. They only remember the memorable ones. Well, now we're the memorable one. And so like we get them. There's no, like you said, the pay isn't the thing. We haven't changed how we're paying them. But we get them because we have this memorable interview and they want to go work for that company that invests in them instead of looks over their shoulder to make sure they're working hard. Like if you get the right person, you don't need to look over their shoulder. Right. So those couple just mindset things have been a game changer for us.
Absolutely. I think one of the big things that you pointed out too was the changing psychologically, you're changing from a negative to a positive, right? Mm-hmm. And going from what you hate to what you love. And there's been studies that have been done, especially on the sales side of things going that way, where questions that you ask, asking the positive side of that question, not the negative side of that question. So
I dig it. It makes such a difference. And it's such a simple thing. We're like geared towards the negative side of it for some reason. Like we want to catch somebody in something. And if we just frame it the right way, it makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
I want to get to the numbers, Joseph, because
awesome.
that like drives. I mean, if you're running a small business and you're an entrepreneur, which is probably why you're watching this show or listening to this podcast or wherever you're seeing this, you're just in the business of decision making. I don't care if it's remodels. I don't care if it's concrete. I don't care if it's hardscape. I don't care if you're a maid service or window cleaner or epoxy floor coating garage floors. And Joseph, you said this earlier, which is, are you a tradesman or are you a businessman? And I see this when we're doing bookkeeping for people. We start bookkeeping for people that are like the solopreneur still and just starting to think about scaling. And something happens when you go from you being in the field doing the task to you hiring people to replace you, which is your job totally changes. You go from being the doer to being a CEO. And not everybody is ready for that change, and not everybody wants that change. They just feel the pressure of the Facebook groups and the maybe this podcast and all the media that they got to scale and they got to scale. And I don't think it's the right thing for everybody. But if you are going to scale, your job absolutely changes. You're no longer a technician. You're no longer a tradesman. You're no longer doing the work. You're a CEO. You're a leader. You're a strategist. You're the HR department. You're the hiring specialist, right? It doesn't matter how good you are with the nail gun or the pressure washer or drawing up the blueprints, whatever it is. It just matters how good of a leader you are and how good you are at training the next person to take over those skill sets and build the systems. Or if you're like me and you suck at building systems, finding the right people to help you build the systems. So I want to get into the financial side of that, which like trips people up a lot. But I'll start high level with it. Is there something in the construction space that you can point to and just be like, that number, that metric? If I just could only track like one thing, and this was what I just told every business owner that was a coach of ours, I just said like, hey, if you want to scale the business, you just got to be like this one thing, this one metric has to be your golden compass. Is there something like that in construction that you just see over and over and over again on the numbers side?
I don't know if it's like one pinpointed thing, but I think one of the most important that is so neglected is knowing with accuracy your costs and your expenses. So, for instance, your employee costs. How much is an employee costing you per hour? You probably would because you do books, but the majority of the business owners out there don't know that. They don't know that my employee that I'm paying them $25 an hour is costing me $31.26 an hour. So the follow-up question I always, pose is, if you don't know how much they're costing you, then how do you know what you're charging for them is enough? So that's,
or just even that they're being efficient enough, right?
yeah,
Like,
well, that gets right into labor utilization rates, right? Which
Yep.
is, if you want to talk one huge metric, labor utilization, because you can grow a company exponentially and grow the profits exponentially without making more sales. By tightening up your costs, tightening up your expenses, increasing your labor utilization rate, and stop being a dummy with your spending. You can be more profitable.
Everybody loves to obsess about revenue, but truly, mathematically, the fastest way to make more money is to cut expenses. And you get to keep all of it. When you grow revenue, you get to keep a fraction of it. When you cut expenses, you get to keep all of it.
Absolutely. I was actually 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I put out a thing and I ran a few webinars on it, did a few videos on it. And I got slaughtered by the sales coaches because the whole thing was sales does not equal profitability.
Not at all.
Not at all. Because, and here's how I will debunk that. I can teach anybody to sell $20 bills or $20 bills for $10. Am I going to be profitable if I sell $20 bills for $10? I'm going to lose my shirt, which most companies are because they get pumped up by these sales guys, sales. And there's two parts to that. There's, you don't know your numbers. So when you're selling the job, you're underselling. But then the second part is you don't have the systems and processes in that when your sales increase, you can't handle it and manage it. So I've seen more companies crumble under the weight of sales than under not having sales.
Yep. As a matter of fact, and I'm like a totally open book with this, our bookkeeping business, we just started a couple of years ago, and it's very much like any other home service business. We shoot for COGS of like 50%. And it's mostly labor, right? Unlike construction, we don't have any materials. We have QuickBooks fees, and we track to make sure, because we're paying for people's QuickBooks and we pass it through to them. And so we do track to make sure we're passing it through. And to the extent we botch that, that's COGS other than labor. Otherwise, it's pure labor. We're there's nothing else that's a direct cost. I guess merchant processing expenses for collecting their money, maybe. But we've grown and grown and grown and grown and doubling and doubling and doubling. And all of a sudden it was but we're making less money. We're doing twice as much work and twice as much revenue, and we're making less money just because we've grown so fast. We started hiring people. And when I was the one hiring, and this isn't a knock on our team, there's a funny thing with bookkeepers that we're all admin people and we don't think like production people, but I do. Because that's my nature, right? I've got all these other production-related businesses, and I know what our production rates are with window cleaners and our utilization. I know what our production rates are for our maid service businesses. And I'm tracking production rates in labor utilization for bookkeeping just the exact same way. It's how much revenue do you collect for how many hours you're working. But our bookkeepers don't think that way. And I obsess about it, but I hadn't trained anybody else to obsess about it. They get bonused on it, but they're not financially incentivized, right? And you pointed that out. That's not the reason they stay with us, is because they get these big fat bonuses. That's me feeling hey, if you're super productive, I want to share it with you. I don't want the company to win. I want you to win and the company to win alongside you, not like the company to only win. So I create these bonus structures so they get a whole bunch of money back when they're super productive, but it doesn't incentivize them to be more productive. It's just a way to reward them when they are. But more importantly for them is like, I got to cross every T and dot every I and like reconcile everything to the penny. And if there's something that's off by a penny, I better ask somebody. I'm like, hey, like, our clients hire us to be productive for them and not waste their time and give them good, accurate data to make decisions and allow them to do their taxes. Our clients didn't hire us to ask them about $5 they spent at Walmart. Like, just call it supplies and move on. Like, it's $5. Ain't nobody making a decision on that $5 Walmart expense. It could have been like a bottle of water and lunch, and it just doesn't matter, right? So just like keep moving. But it's this funny thing with, like you said earlier, labor utilization. I think if I had to pick one metric for any business that we've ever had, whether we're cleaning stuff, whether we're constructing stuff, whether we're doing people's books, it's how productive is our team. Because if I can dial that in, and when I talk to our bookkeeping clients, we break out cost of goods sold for all their businesses, and I just stress, like, this should be the easiest thing for you to manage. It's easy to tell when your productivity starts to get off, but it's so imperative that it doesn't, because if you're the business owner and you know for certainty that you're going to be at 50% cost of goods sold every single month, no matter what, because you built the system and the processes to execute that, your confidence to invest in growth is monumental. Your ability to take risks and go do big things is huge. If you don't know whether your cost of goods sold is going to land at 40% or 70% or 60% or 80%, and it's flying in the wind and you don't have a way to protect that number, it makes it really hard to get confident about making big investments and growing your business if you don't know how much money you're going to make when you go do your job. And that, like, and that's like, if I could get one thing right, as long as I know what our production rates are and that labor utilization, I can pretty much damn well guarantee what our gross margin is going to be. That makes it really easy for me to invest in marketing, recruiting, administrative people to handle the office stuff, rent for a bigger facility to grow into. Like, all those investments, if I know what type of gross margin we're going to make, I got no problem taking big risks on those investments. But if that gross margin isn't consistent, it's like, oh, I don't know how much money I have as a business owner to try to grow this thing because it might fall apart and change tomorrow.
Absolutely. No, I agree. That lack of knowledge, kind of have a cheeky metaphor for it. But if, as a business owner, you're not tracking data and you're not looking at your metrics and you don't know your numbers, it's, do you remember the 90s movie, Robin Hood Men in Tights?
Oh, you bet I do.
Okay, Blinken. You know Blinken.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So blind guy, right? So there's a scene where Robin Hood rides into the Sherwood Forest and he kind of looks up and shakes his head because Blinken, blind guy, is in the watchtower. And Robin Hood looks up and goes, "Blinking, what are you doing?" Do you remember what he says?
I don't. Refresh me.
He goes, "I'm guessing." So if you're a business owner and you don't track data or collect data, track metrics.
That's such a good freaking analogy.
All you're doing is you're guessing. You're guessing at business. I read a quote the other day from Albert Einstein. He said, you have to learn the rules of the game, then you have to go and play better than anybody else. Well, in business, the rules to the game is money. It's numbers. It's metrics. It's data. It's not framing. It's not concrete. It's not electrical or pressure washing. The rules to the game of business is numbers.
Yeah. I find that people love to obsess. I don't know if you see this in construction, but in hardscaping and pressure washing and garage floors, people love to obsess about their average ticket. And it's just this craze that everybody's on. Average ticket. I got to get on my average ticket. And I'm like, Yeah, that's neat as long as you have data that suggests that your production rate on those big average tickets doesn't go down. Because what I tend to see is you get a huge average ticket, but you sacrificed, like, yeah, it's a huge project, but it doesn't mean your margins went any higher. Usually you sacrificed a bunch of margin, which means you're making less money and you're working twice as hard because this is like a big ticket. And you got to like keep this person happy. I'm like, I don't care if I do 10 $100 gutter cleans in a day or one $1,000 pressure washing in a day. 10 $100 gutter cleanings in a day, if I can get them done in less time than one $1,000 pressure washing job in a day, average ticket is irrelevant. My production rate on those gutter cleans is so much higher. Now, like if they were all right across the street, that would work, but you'd have drive times and whatever else the case is. So you got to like look at it holistically. And when we look at production rates, we don't look at it as, and again, this might not relate to construction because you're at a job site over and over and over again. But if you're in multiple job sites throughout the day, right? If you're in like lawn care and maintenance type of stuff, that production rate better include your drive time because that's part of the cost of getting to those jobs. And you have to pass that cost along to the clients. And that's part of your overall production rate and has to go into that decision. And again, why I think average ticket is slightly irrelevant because all that it goes back to is what's your labor utilization. Yeah, if your average ticket is high and that means that your labor utilization is higher, neat. But it doesn't always mean that. You can I can again, just back to like I could go sell $20 bills for $10. My average ticket would be higher than if I was selling $10 bills for $5, but I'm actually losing more money by doing these bigger average tickets because my business model sucks.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's I always look at the full picture, right? Looking at the costs, the labor utilization, how I'm recovering my expenses, how am I making money, right? So, for instance, estimating and bidding work. The purpose of it is not to get a job.
I like that.
And I said it, right? Probably have a couple people, the purpose of bidding and estimating is not to get a job. That's the outcome. The outcome of bidding or estimating is getting a job or not getting a job.
Yeah.
The purpose of bidding and estimating is simple as recovering your costs, recovering your expenses, and getting paid to do it. So when I sit down to estimate a job, my mind shouldn't be getting the job. My mind should be, how am I going to recover my costs? How am I going to recover my proportionate expenses? And how am I going to make profit on it?
Mm-hmm.
And estimate and bid according to that. At the end of that, at the end of the day, whether I get the job or I don't get the job should not make me rethink the way I estimate it if I have my numbers in order. Mm-hmm. Because if I discount my work, there's only one place that money comes from.
Yeah, it's your pocket.
Yeah, right? So if I discount it, I'm taking it from the profit of it. So I'm stealing money from the shareholders, right? So, but unfortunately, a lot of business owners have been trained mentally on finances the same as we were in school. Income minus expenses is savings.
Yep.
So we look at profit as revenue minus costs minus expenses equals profit, whatever's left over.
Yep.
That's what's causing you not to have profit.
Yep.
Rather than setting a profit goal, working it into your markup.
Protect it.
Yeah.
It's part of the business model. The business doesn't exist unless the owner's making money.
Absolutely. So,
one of the things I see that I want to get into on that is profit oftentimes gets misconstrued And I had a call with one of my bookkeeping clients today, and we were talking about this because he was talking about buying out his business partner because he does more work than his business partner. And I was like, yeah, but profit goes to the owners, paychecks go to the operators. You're talking about you and your business partner as operators. You guys get paychecks for that. Owners get distributions. If you own stock in Amazon, do you ever get a phone call to come into the warehouse to move boxes around? No. Like, you don't have a job. You own shares.
Yeah.
You're an owner. You get dividends. You don't have a job. You have no responsibilities other than like making sure the CEO is doing their job. So there's this, because of that inability to see that separately. And I just see this over and over again because we're owner operators. We just like wear one hat. And I'm like, no, you got to wear both. Sometimes you're an owner and sometimes you're an operator, and an operator gets a paycheck for doing work, and an owner sits on a beach and gets dividends, and you're both. But someday you might just be the owner, and you might pay a CEO, and you need to make sure that there's money left for you when you're just the owner. Because if you think the profit is just you getting the paycheck, then the owner's not making any money. And you just have a business that literally has no profit. You're taking distributions thinking you're making profit, but you're just making your paycheck for running the business. There's actually no profit to the owner. That's a real shitty business with a really crappy return. You might as well go put it in the stock market and roll the dice.
Right. I love the road you're going down, because this is something that I talk so much about, that you are not your business and your business is not you. Completely two entities, right? If you started the business, then you're a shareholder. If you work in the business, you're an employee, just like you said, right? Yep. So now, and I generally address this when it comes to the emotional aspect, which it seems that client, there was that emotional aspect. The question is, if you had an employee that acted like you in your business, would they still be working there? So smarten the hell up and start acting like the CEO, right? Like, if the CEO of Apple was a whiny little girl because they're not getting their own way, would he still have a job?
Might not be the CEO anymore.
Exactly. And, even it doesn't matter if, how small or large the company is, that's got to be the mindset. I show up every day as an employee of X, Y, and Z, operating as the CEO.
Yep.
So it's not about, how much do I leave in the company? You leave everything in the company, and the company pays you, right? Like,
yep.
And getting into that mindset.
Yeah, it's a separate entity, and you might happen to be the one that decides on when the company's going to pay dividends, because you might not have a board of directors. But if you get big enough, you probably should.
Absolutely.
Like, keep you honest. Let the board of directors help out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people with great experiences that have an objective viewpoint that's going to keep you honest with it.
Absolutely. And as a shareholder, you don't want a bunch of money every year out of the company. There's you take it, you got to pay taxes on it. There's enough ways in it to, minimize tax implications, but have a, generous life.
Yep. If you had one investment you could make in a business, where would you make it? If you're the operator, let's say.
If I was the operator and I had to make an investment, what do you mean?
I want to leave it wide open for you to see where you take it.
I
don't want to. I have an idea of what I mean, but I almost just want to see where you go with it.
So if I was to invest in the company, I would invest in the future of it. So one of the big things I'm always a fan of investing in is mentorship, investing in training employees, investing in improving that way versus, we're going to buy more equipment, we're going to buy, a bigger office, we're going to do anything, something that way.
Yeah,
I always am a firm believer in investing in where you want to be tomorrow, not where you're at today.
I dig it. I dig it. Um, I don't. My guess is you didn't watch the full hour long episode of Turfs Up Radio, but that was where I wanted to like go with that show today. Um, and I didn't get to it until like way in the end, and I had no influence from anything else before I just kind of like scribbled some notes down. But I wanted to talk about investing because it seems to be this time of year that people just make investments because they have some idle time in their business, and so they start spending money. But they don't always think about it like investments, and it causes them to make some rash decisions oftentimes. Um, and I broke investments down in our business into 4 different groups. You have your infrastructure investments, which would be like rent, insurance, software type of stuff. You have I got to check my notes just to make sure I don't miss one. Um, you have equipment investments, which you mentioned, and that's new equipment or repairs and maintenance. You have marketing related investments to go find more clients and or customer service existing clients, and then you have employee related investments to find new employees or to mentor or build culture or whatever in your existing employees. And that was where and the reason I didn't want to say what I meant is because I was just curious where you would go with it. And in a funny way, because this isn't something you and I talked about, and like I said, I don't think you saw me talk about it early on Turfs Up. You said exactly what I said, which is the only investment you should be thinking about. The rest of the investments can always follow, but if you get the employee investment right, it's going to drag a marketing investment to fill up the schedule, which is going to drag the equipment investment because now you have that work on the schedule, and that work can't get done without this piece of equipment. And that's going to drag the infrastructure investment because you got too many employees now and you got to put them somewhere. But that first investment, if you want to grow the business and the long-term longevity of the business, always has to be in the employees. And it just goes back to what we were talking about earlier. That's where all the value is in the business. And so that's where you got to invest.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think a big thing too, when it comes to investing in his business is, I told you I was the numbers nerd, right? So I'm going to geek out a little bit even more, but is tracking things. So one of the practices I always put in play is job tracking, and even down to our equipment usage, our rental equipment usage, sub trades we would need. Because at the end of the year, if I'm flush with capital and I need to invest in some to defer, um, you know, taxes or defer something, what do I invest in? Most people, they just invest in the biggest shiniest thing, without having data and knowledge of what they're going to invest in. And we would track everything. And after we invested into employees, invested in growing the company, investing into furthering the future of the company, we would look back and say, okay, we don't need another skid steer. We need a light stack, because in Saskatchewan during the winter, we have 2 hours of sunshine, right? So we don't need another skid steer. We need a light stack because we've rented it over and over and over and over and over.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah, tracking throughout the year will help you even make investment decisions.
The math is the path.
Absolutely.
Darren jumped on. It always just says Facebook user, but I always look at Facebook so I can see who it is. Darren's on. He said, Renee liked the jogging promo with my shirt off. What the fuck? Sorry, man. Sorry, Darren. I work out. I'm getting that midday run in. So what are you going to do? So Joseph, in that spirit, as you're, running these businesses and making investments, when you're looking at potential investment opportunities, are you looking for certain industries to invest in, or are you really just looking for a set of financials that match what you think they should be, and that's what you're investing in. And does it even matter what the hell industry it's in?
It doesn't matter the industry. So generally, when I look at investing, the first thing I look at is the person. Before I even take a look at the financial statements, I look at the person that I'm investing into. So sitting down, getting to know them a little bit. And then it's definitely looking at their standing in the community. So how hard is it going to be for me to grow them if they have a bad name or a bad reputation? The financial statements never really bother me, and I want to see them. I need to see them. It tells me more, the financial statement. I mean, you can look at a set of financial statements in 30 seconds, know how good of an operator they are, how good of a business manager they are, what their day sales outstanding is, right? Like, you can get all the story of the company out of financial statements by just, glancing over them in a few minutes. But the financial statements never scare me because I know that I can turn them into a profitable company.
Yeah, that's the skill set you're bringing. That just tells you how much value there is for you to add.
So, once I look at the person, I look at their reputation, then I want to see how they are as an operator. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, whenever I come in and I partner, it's very clear cut with them. You are operations, I am business. I'm not going to tell you how to do the trade, and you ain't going to tell me how to do the business, right? You're not going to tell me how to run the finances and, the financial side of it. So I want to see how they are as an operator, their skill level, how they interact with employees, how they interact with customers. So that's generally the process I go down, which might be a little different than most business investors because they want to see the finances. But in the construction and service-based industries, finances don't scare me.
Yeah. Is there a certain size of business where you're like trying to target, where you think you have you said 5 to 10 million earlier for coaching. Is that a similar size to where you think you're a good investor to come in, or is it smaller companies or bigger companies where you can make more of an impact as an investor?
More of an impact on the smaller. So I look at the guys that are somewhere between that 1 to 500. They're hitting that glass ceiling because they're at that place where, their owner operator mentality, they're losing efficiency because their owner operator mentality. So I want to, for me, it's easier to scale them to that first million right away than it is to come in. You come into a 5 million, a 2.5 million, a 10 million. There's a lot more moving parts, and it's kind of like more of getting a train started, right? Rather than pushing a shopping cart down a hill.
Yep. Jason Hefner chimed in. He just jumped in. He said, I need an investor. Jason, I call dibs. When you need an investment, you let me know. Dibs on being your investor because you demand, man. So to that regard, and Jason just kind of like spurred this thought for me because I'm going in a similar path. I actually have 3 or 4 businesses where I'm not the operator, but I also don't have a business partner that's the operator. We have a manager there, whatever the case is. And I'm like invested in that manager. But if that manager leaves, so like we have a home cleaning business in Cleveland, and that manager has to like move out. She actually moved into our recruiting business. So it's like, if I don't have that manager, then I'm kind of out too, right? It's like, absolutely. I'm invested in that person. And so I'm kind of realizing what sounds like you have realized prior, which is, I can't be the operator of all these companies. I need to be the investor. So in Minneapolis, I have my business partner, Andy. He owns some, we own some, but I'm more of like a CFO, and we meet every week, but I haven't been to the office in a year, and he does better if I never come to the office. I'll come whenever I can be useful. I think I'm going there next week to help with some like upsell training and stuff like that, and just to hang out with the guys a little bit. But in general, I'm just the finance guy. I'm just the coach and the CFO and helping them make decisions and bouncing ideas around. And that's just a much sweeter role, especially for me, because I've got businesses. I'm in Minneapolis, but I have Cleveland and Cincinnati and St. Louis, and we had Tampa for a while. We had Portland for a while. And man, I'll tell you what, I got 3 kids now, and I don't like having to. I mean, and we're going to trade shows and stuff, so I'm traveling a lot, and I just don't enjoy traveling all over the place. I love like meeting other business owners, especially seeing our customers out there and BSing with them. That's like my sweet spot. But I don't, and I love going. Like we got the huge convention coming up in a month, and I just can't freaking wait to get down there and hang out with a whole bunch of our clients and potential clients and all that sort of thing. But actually, the thing that I don't like to travel to is to our operating companies. I hate it. I don't want it. Like, I had to go to St. Louis, and I love our team in St. Louis. I had to go there because we were transitioning our general manager out, putting a new general manager in. But I had to miss my 4-year-old's birthday party. It's like, that's a shitty dad. I don't want to be that dad. I want to be hanging out, doing the family thing. So, like the investor role in that case, when it's remote, just got to be an investor, got to be a CFO. Can't be an operator of a St. Louis home cleaning business when I live in Minneapolis. It just doesn't work.
No, and I think that's the biggest risk when you come in as that investor, right? And you come in to that role is you don't want to be the operator. You know, for me, I mean, I've invested in companies where, much like my concrete company, I don't know a gosh darn thing about the trade. You're not going to catch me in a piece of equipment excavating, footers if the operator decides to bugger off, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where it's really important to look at the person, and I'm investing into the person more than even into the company.
Yep. Yeah, it's absolutely all about the person. I think when we started investing as Blue Skies, I mean, we started going to all these markets, and it's one of those things where I wouldn't do it again the way we did it, where we like invested as the operator. I'd invest as the investor and invest in an operator. But our qualifications were always the same, which is you have to have the market, right? The opportunity needs to exist. You have to have the capital to be able to put into that market, and you have to have the person. And I think when I first started, I thought all of those were like a third. And as I've gone on, I realized that the market's actually not that important, and the capital will always find. The person's like everything. If you have the right person, you can have the best. If you have the right person, your market can suck and your capital can suck, and you can still make it work. But if you have the best market in the world and you have all the capital in the world, unlimited, if your person sucks, you got nothing. You absolutely have nothing. Absolutely. I mean, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the recruiting thing is if you don't have the right team, you got nothing. Doesn't matter how good your processes are. If ain't nobody going to run them.
You might have to look at a franchise model.
I don't know. We like when we first started, we had this debate of are we going to like own everything or franchise everything? And I think we have this hate of franchises. Not hate's too strong of a word, but it's not personal enough. And we don't want to be in the business of franchising again, because like I'm not passionate about systems and processes. And if you're doing franchises, you better be passionate about systems and processes, because that's what you're spending all day building and reinforcing and like selling. So it's like, I wouldn't be good running it, but I make a hell of a CFO for any operator that's doing their own thing. I can CFO the hell out of that, but like building a franchise system I think that would keep me up a lot of nights.
But just think, you got to do it once, right?
Yeah.
You got to build it once.
Just that one time. Time.
Absolutely.
Maybe I don't know any franchise bookkeeping businesses, but I guess we don't really need to franchise because we can bookkeep for anybody anywhere. Although we don't do Canada yet. Canada, you guys got those accrual basis rules that you got to follow. In the U.S., we can just do simple cash basis, and save a whole hell of a lot of time. So at some point we gotta get up into, working with Canadian dollars, but haven't had to cross that bridge yet.
Right. I ended up, I took a vinyl fencing company. So it was a client, they were a coaching client, kept hitting that glass ceiling. He was about that 150, 175 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Came to me and I ended up taking half his company. And it was, you're going to operate, I'm going to run the business. We grew it to a point where we actually franchised it.
No kidding.
Yeah, ran it through franchise. And here's the importance, talk about the importance of investing in the person. Great guy. We grew the company from, he came to me, he was at like I said, 150, 175. After year 2, we were in 3 provinces and pushing a mill, and franchised it, just got a franchise. And he's like, yeah, I'm done. I'm sick of the industry. I want out. I'm like, right. So then there you are as the second part of it with no operator.
Yeah.
What do you do at that point?
What did you do? Do you sell it? Do you try to find another operator?
The operating company just kind of, wound down, to be honest. With most companies in the construction service space, and vinyl fencing is no different. They're worth about 65 cents on the dollar of the assets they have, and that's about it.
I was going to say, it's not, the client list isn't that valuable because it's one-time work.
Absolutely. So that kind of went to the wayside. The franchise, I actually took ownership of the franchise, and it's sitting nice and pretty in a shelf corp right now.
Yeah, that's interesting, because that's always the thing I hear. I haven't been through it yet. I have 4. Well, there's 4 of us that own our holding company, and I was the last one to the party. 3 of them started a third. I was in the corporate world. And I just kind of like poked my head in, like, what are you guys doing over here? Like, let me know if you need any help. And now I'm the operator guy. But in Minneapolis, we have an operating partner. In Cincinnati, we have an operating partner. We have an investment down in Naples, Florida. And I've never gone through it, but I've heard that breaking up with business partners is basically like a divorce. Mm-hmm. And it can be really painful. And I thank God that we've been lucky enough to have just super good business partners so far. And generally, when it's like one of us is like, man, we should probably get out of this thing, the other one just happens to come up first and be like, I think we got to sell this thing, or I think we got to double down. And we've just always been able to get to the same page, but the day is coming where we can't. And I just haven't been through that yet, but it's a bridge that I know at some point I'll cross and have to figure that all out.
In 2008, I went through it was actually my first partnership, and it went dirty. And biggest reason, their spouse came in to it. And, so now I wasn't just dealing with a partner, I'm dealing with their spouse as well. It was dirty. And since then, it really taught me the importance of, partnership agreements, as well as setting clear expectations. And even though there's a partnership, is something that it really taught me as well, is there needs to be one voice that's louder. Yeah. And it needs to be agreed upon during the very beginning, whose voice that is, that needs to be slightly louder, so that if it does come to a place where it's a stalemate, who's making that final decision.
Yep. I won't say we have it totally buttoned up, but we've always done a good job of getting an operating agreement in place that said who the operating partner is and what level of dollar amount decision they're allowed to make without having to get any sign off, right? And then what dollar decision they can make as long as I'm on board. And then the other 3 guys trust me to be the conduit for that decision, right? And be the representative of our holding company. And then where we need to get like the 2/3 majority of everybody to say, yep, if it's a $50,000 more decision, whether it's a piece of equipment, whether it's a marketing, whatever, whatever the size of the decision is going, like over that dollar amount, there's certain decisions where if we're going to take on 50,000 of debt or buy $100,000 asset, we better all be on board with making that investment. And a lot of times our partners are like, well, whatever you guys think, we're good. But every once in a while, it's like you want that guy in your corner where you're like, here's what we're thinking. What are we missing? And we have a interesting dynamic where we have one super conservative guy, one super like, yeah, whatever, let's do it, like let's go, and then one very pragmatic. My business partner that I'm kind of the predecessor of, that was the former CEO of our businesses, who has a lot of investment experience that he's bringing to the table, so has a ton of influence because he's like, we invested in this and here's how we did it, and we invested in this and here's how we did it. And so we just have this crazy dynamic between the four of us, and I'm in the weeds, right? I'm seeing the things and I'm doing the things. And so it creates some interesting board meetings when we're talking about different investments we want to make, because we have literally every different dynamic represented, which can, lead to very tangential discussions. But at the end of the day, I think we get a lot of great outcomes out of it. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you know what? That's great because you get that full spectrum too of, how they're seeing it, because they're not all the same, not all same personality. It sounds like not all the same, process things. So you get a more well-rounded outcome, I'm sure.
Yep. Jason dropped this question in here. How does an investor get paid? I think he jumped on after you and I had talked about this earlier. And we both segmented it very similarly, which is you've got the operator, the CEO, the person running the business, and they get a paycheck. And then you have the owners. And a lot of times the owner and the operator are the same person. And that's where we kind of get stuck in the trap of thinking that when we're the owner, we get a paycheck. But owners don't get paychecks. If you own stock in a company, you don't get a paycheck. They don't ask you to come in and do work. They send you a dividend check, or your stock appreciates and you sell it for a capital gain later. So an investor gets paid. If we don't think about the small business world, and I like to use Amazon as an example because everybody can look at Amazon and see it traded on the public market, and we all know what it is. If you go dump money into the stock market in Amazon, you're generally going to get a dividend check, which is like profit that they can't reinvest in the company, so they pay it back to the shareholders. And you're investing in them because you think they're going to keep increasing value with these investments that they're making in the business, so you're going to get capital gains. So an investor gets paid two ways: dividends throughout, if the owners agree that we have excess profit that we can't reinvest, and then capital gains when a sale event happens. And so in the small business world, we call it distributions. We don't call it dividends, but an owner would get paid with distributions and then would get paid when the business sells. And sometimes the business sells because, like, if Jason were to take on an investor, he might take on an investor, get some cash, use it for marketing or for equipment or whatever that linchpin is to scale the business. And now he'd have an investor of 10 or 20, some minority share, right? And Jason would likely be the person to buy that investor back out at some future date and take it back on. It was just like the linchpin he needed to get past a certain point, and sometimes money is the thing you need to accomplish that scale. Joseph, I'm curious if you've ever been in that type of role where you came in as an investor to provide some capital, but it was always intended on being like a period of time until the owner, the operator, would buy you back out when they got it to a certain level. Have you ever been in any deal like that?
No, I try to avoid those type of scenarios. Just my personality, what I like. I like to rather be more influential in it. I look for the long term. I've had some short term where I did get bought out, but it wasn't that I went into it with that sole purpose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how many investments do you have right now?
Going on right now, 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have as an investor now, I mean, investing is its own business, right? So it always comes back to like a business model. As an investor, is there a sweet spot for you where you're like, I can handle 5, but if I had more than that, I wouldn't have time for the coaching stuff? Or, hey, maybe I'll just like not be a coach and just be an investor because I could have 10 or 20 investments. Is there like a dynamic like that comes into play for you?
I don't like to have more than like the 3 because it does start to take, your part of that role is, especially with the startups or the smaller companies, is firefighter. You're,
Mm-hmm.
you're a firefighter and a babysitter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, especially with the role that I take on in the financial and the business side of it.
Yep.
So for me to manage the lifestyle I want, manage my coaching clients and the companies that I work with, I don't like to take on more than, that 2 or 3 at a time and go from there.
Yeah. How do you find most of your investments through coaching? So you kind of have an idea of who needs it, who you can help, who you'd want to help, or do they come and like so you reach out to them, or do they come to you, or a little bit of both? How does that work when
A
you
little
get
bit of both. So the majority of the ones that I've invested in were first clients. So I like that because it gives me an opportunity to really essentially get paid to do my due diligence. I
Yeah.
mean, you know how it is as an investor. I mean, you never get paid to do due diligence on a
No,
company that
that's a
you're
lot of
investing
sunk cost. That's always a lot of sunk cost.
in. So for me, it's kind of a great fit because I get paid to do my due diligence on a company that I might invest in. So it's just a model that works very well for me.
Is there a percentage that works well that you usually target to have?
A minimum of 35.
Minimum of 35. Do
Yeah.
you ever take a majority share, or do you intentionally keep it a minority share so they still have like the majority of the skin in the game?
I will generally take only up to 50 equal percent. I never come in and take the majority share. I never have either. Part of it is it's their company. I would rather, because again, that operator, I don't want to be an operator. I would rather bail out of the company than take so much that I risk the operator bailing out. And then I'm
Mm-hmm.
stuck with this huge liability at that point.
Yep. Yep. I got you. Well, man, we've been going for like darn near 2 hours here. Somehow, I don't know when that happened, but what did we miss? Did we? I feel like we rounded the bases a couple times. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't yet?
You know what? I don't think so. I think this was fantastic, man. I love talking numbers with you. I could talk numbers all night. I mean, really getting
We
into
could keep this going, but at some point, I should probably go to bed and get up and do some more work tomorrow. I guess.
right, right. I mean, especially the theory behind it. But this was fantastic, man.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom and talking the bull with you, talking the business bull. What we got one more, Jason. I think that's probably Jason chiming in. Heck yeah, it is. Um, Firehouse saving lives and giving rides. Um, well, Jason, looking forward to seeing you in Nashville, man. It's been a little bit. I saw him in Nashville at the huge convention last year. I was in Atlanta last year. I'll see him in Nashville this year. Joseph, thanks for jumping on and hanging out. It was great.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. This was great, man.
Well, let's do it again sometime. Until then, everybody, I'll see you next Wednesday. We got Turfs Up. We got another. Actually, I got Turfs Up. I don't think I'm doing a late night show next week. We'll probably get some out on the podcast, but I won't be going live. We got a family fishing vacation going on. Got to go catch some salmon and fill up the freezer here. So we'll be just doing Turfs Up next week, and I'll catch you then. That'll be 3 Central, 4 Eastern. You guys know the drill. And until then, go make some money. Peace out.